Keanu Reeves had just finished months of filming in different cities, moving from one set to another, working long hours, and giving everything to his role. Even though he was loved by millions for his movies, he was a man who lived simply. He often searched for quiet places where nobody would disturb him. That was why he chose to travel to Thailand. He had heard stories of the country's culture, the temples, the food, and most importantly, the martial art of Muay Thai. Keanu had trained for years in different fighting styles for his films, but he respected every form of martial arts. For him, it was not just about action scenes or fights, it was about discipline, focus, and learning from different traditions. One hot afternoon, Keanu walked through the streets of Bangkok wearing casual clothes, just jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a cap pulled low. To anyone passing by, he looked like a normal tourist. He stopped near a small gym where the sound of gloves hitting pads and the sharp calls of trainers echoed outside. Curious, he stepped closer and peeked in. Inside, he saw young men and women sweating hard, their fists and legs moving with speed and strength. The gym smelled of effort and determination, with old posters of famous Muay Thai champions on the walls. Keanu felt a pull inside him. He wanted to step in, not as a movie star, but as a student ready to learn. When he entered, the trainers noticed him but didn't recognize who he was. To them, he was just another foreigner walking into their sacred training ground. The head trainer, a strong man with years of experience, greeted him with a polite nod but with little interest. Many tourists had walked in before, curious to try Muay Thai for one day before giving up. The trainer believed this man would be no different. Keanu smiled gently and asked if he could join the training session. His voice was calm, respectful, and humble. The trainer raised an eyebrow, wondering if the stranger knew what he was asking for. Muay Thai was not easy, and it was not something to play with. Still, he agreed, deciding it would be amusing to watch the tourists struggle. As Keanu wrapped his hands and prepared, some students at the gym whispered and chuckled. They thought he would not last even half an hour. To them, he was just a thin man with kind eyes who didn't look like a fighter. One student laughed softly and said in Thai, "He will quit after the warm-up." Others nodded. Nobody knew that this was the same man who had trained for years in judo, jiu-jitsu, and even boxing for his film roles. Nobody knew he had spent hours with real martial artists to understand how they moved, how they thought, and how they respected their craft. The warm-up began. The trainer expected Keanu to sweat heavily and slow down quickly. But to his surprise, Keanu moved with balance and control. He skipped rope with steady rhythm, his body relaxed yet sharp. He followed the stretching routine without a single complaint. His breathing was even, as if his body was used to this kind of training. The trainer frowned a little, watching more closely now. Still, he thought to himself, let us see how long this lasts. When the punching drills started, Keanu stepped forward with quiet confidence. The pad holder signaled him to throw basic jabs and crosses. The sound that followed made everyone in the gym stop for a second. Smack. Smack. His punches landed clean, straight, and strong. They were not wild or clumsy, they were precise. The trainer raised his eyebrows again. He could tell this man had trained before. Still, he believed that Muay Thai was different. The real test would come with the kicks, knees, and elbows. As the session continued, Keanu's movements surprised everyone. His kicks were sharp, his footwork balanced, and his eyes focused. Yet, he remained humble, listening to instructions, bowing slightly each time the trainer corrected him. He didn't show off. He didn't try to prove he was better. He acted like a true student, eager to learn. The students who had laughed earlier now looked at him with curiosity. "Who is this man?" they whispered to each other. But the head trainer was not pleased. Instead of feeling proud that a foreigner respected Muay Thai, he felt his pride being challenged. The trainer was a man known for his strictness. To him, Muay Thai was not just a sport, it was an identity. He had dedicated his entire life to it, and he didn't like the idea of someone walking in and looking skilled so easily. He began to test Keanu by increasing the intensity. He ordered him into sparring drills, where he personally held the pads and attacked with sudden kicks and punches. Normally, beginners would struggle, lose balance, or panic. But Keanu did not. He stayed calm, his guard always up, his responses smooth. He didn't fight back hard, but he defended himself with near-perfect timing. The trainer started to push harder. His kicks grew stronger, his jabs faster. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple as he tried to break the stranger's calmness. Still, Keanu moved like water, flowing from one defense to another, never losing patience. Around the gym, silence grew. The students had stopped their own practice to watch. Something about the way Keanu moved seemed familiar to them. They had seen it before, maybe not in real life, but on the big screen. They began to murmur softly, connecting the dots. One young fighter whispered, isn't he that actor? The one from John Wick." Another gasped quietly. They stared closer at the man who looked so ordinary but moved with such skill. The trainer, still unaware, kept attacking, his pride refusing to accept what was happening. He had planned to make the stranger quit, but now he was the one sweating harder. Keanu's face remained calm, his movements humble, never mocking, never aggressive. He was not trying to humiliate the trainer. He was simply showing respect through his discipline. But the trainer's pride was now locked in battle with this quiet man who refused to break. And so, in that small gym in Bangkok, what began as a simple training session turned into something far more intense. Keanu Reeves, the humble actor who had come looking for peace, was now standing in front of a proud Muay Thai trainer who believed he was teaching a lesson. Neither of them knew that the real lesson was just beginning. The trainer tightened his stance, his eyes fixed on Keanu as if this quiet visitor had suddenly turned into a rival. The earlier amusement he felt was gone. Pride began to rise in his chest. For years, he had taught Muay Thai to students who respected him, who looked at him as a master, someone untouchable in skill. But this stranger, who had walked in so politely, was standing firm against everything he threw. It was a strange mix of confusion and irritation building inside him. The gym had gone quiet. Only the sound of fists striking pads, the shuffle of feet on the mats, and the heavy breathing of the fighters filled the air. The other students had stopped their practice, their eyes glued to the unusual scene. None of them had seen their master act this way with a visitor. Normally, the trainer showed kindness to newcomers, teaching them slowly, never letting pride get in the way. But this time was different. Something about Keanu's calm eyes, his steady breathing, and his effortless movements unsettled the trainer. He wanted to prove himself. Keanu, however, remained composed. He didn't push forward aggressively. He didn't try to show that he was better. His style was respectful, his movements sharp but not arrogant. Every time the trainer advanced with a hard jab or a sharp kick, Keanu blocked or shifted aside, letting the force pass without resistance. To him, it wasn't a fight. It was training. It was an exchange of skill and energy. Yet, to the trainer, it was beginning to feel like a challenge to his authority. The trainer began circling around, his body moving faster. He threw a series of quick strikes, first a jab, then a cross, then a low kick aimed at Keanu's thigh. Many foreigners, even strong ones, would buckle under such pressure. But Keanu absorbed the strikes with disciplined footwork. He turned slightly, his guard never dropping. His body didn't tense with panic, it flowed with calmness. He looked less like a beginner and more like someone who had lived in the rhythm of martial arts for years. The whispers among the students grew louder. Some of them had already recognized him, though they kept it to themselves. One young boy at the back, who loved action movies, tugged on his friend's sleeve and whispered, "I think that's Keanu Reeves?" His friend's eyes widened in disbelief. They both kept watching, waiting for a clear moment to be sure. The trainer, however, was still blind to it. In his mind, he was simply teaching this stubborn tourist a lesson. He increased the intensity. His next attack came in the form of a powerful roundhouse kick, the kind that could easily drop a man. The air cracked as his shin cut through the space toward Keanu's ribs. But Keanu shifted just enough, raising his guard, and absorbed the kick without flinching. His feet stayed firm on the mat, his balance unshaken. That single moment made the trainer pause. For the first time, a small doubt crossed his mind. He had trained countless students, and even seasoned fighters sometimes stumbled under that kick. Yet this man, who looked so ordinary, had stood like a rock. The trainer narrowed his eyes. He was beginning to realize that something was different about this visitor. Keanu, noticing the trainer's rising intensity, chose to respond with grace. He didn't strike back with full power. Instead, he showed skill through controlled movements. When the trainer punched, Keanu parried smoothly and tapped him lightly on the shoulder, showing he had found an opening but without hurting him. It was the way a respectful martial artist communicated, "I see your move, and I respect it, but I will not harm you." The students, watching closely, were amazed. They had never seen their master tested like this. The room was filled with a strange energy, part disbelief, part excitement. It felt as though a movie scene had come to life right in front of them. One student whispered, "He fights like John Wick." The words spread like a ripple through the group. Soon, everyone was looking at Keanu with new eyes. The trainer pushed again, throwing knees and elbows, testing the limits. His pride wouldn't let him stop. But Keanu responded with calm blocks, leaning just enough to let the strikes miss by an inch, or raising his guard at the perfect moment. He didn't overreact. He didn't try to dominate. He simply moved with control, like a man who had trained for years under pressure. Finally, the trainer tried a feint, pretending to strike high before swinging low. Many fighters would fall for such tricks, but Keanu didn't. He read the movement instantly, adjusted his stance, and blocked it cleanly. The trainer froze for half a second, surprised that his trick hadn't worked. His eyes met Keanu's calm gaze, and something shifted inside him. He realized he wasn't fighting a tourist anymore. At that moment, the youngest student could no longer hold back. He blurted out in English, "That's Keanu Reeves?" The gym erupted in murmurs. Heads turned. Eyes widened. The realization spread like fire. Some gasped, others smiled in shock. Suddenly, the room was not just a training space, it had become a stage where the actor who played the legendary assassin, John Wick, was standing in flesh and blood, moving like a real fighter. The trainer blinked, his body frozen. Slowly, he turned to look at Keanu again. This time, he saw him not just as a stranger but as someone who had spent years learning martial arts from masters around the world. He understood now why his strikes hadn't broken him, why his feints hadn't fooled him, and why his balance never wavered. He had been sparring with a man who had trained like a warrior, even if it was for film. Keanu, however, didn't smile in triumph. He simply bowed his head slightly, showing respect to the trainer. His humility was greater than any skill he displayed. He wasn't there to embarrass anyone. He was there to learn, to honor the art of Muay Thai. That simple bow carried a powerful message: "I respect you, and I respect your craft." The trainer, still breathing heavily, lowered his fists. His pride, which had burned so strongly, began to soften. He realized he had misjudged this man. He had seen only an ordinary tourist when, in truth, he was facing someone extraordinary, not just because of fame, but because of his discipline and humility. The students, now buzzing with excitement, gathered closer, their eyes shining with admiration. For them, it was a story they would tell forever, the day Keanu Reeves, the man who became John Wick, trained in their humble gym and showed the spirit of a true martial artist. The trainer took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew he had a choice: continue fighting out of pride, or accept the lesson standing right before him. And so, what began as an attempt to test a visitor had turned into something much deeper: a moment of respect, a moment of realization, and a moment that no one in the gym would ever forget. The gym was still buzzing from the shocking realization. Students whispered to each other, their voices filled with amazement. Some pointed quietly while others stood with wide eyes, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The trainer, who had been so fierce a few minutes earlier, stood frozen, his fists still halfway raised. He had been attacking with all his skill and power, yet the man in front of him, who looked so calm, so ordinary, had blocked and countered every move. And now, the truth was out. This was no ordinary visitor. This was Keanu Reeves, the very man who had stunned the world as John Wick. Keanu adjusted his stance, slowly lowering his guard. His breathing was steady, as if the exchange had been nothing more than a warm-up. Sweat rolled lightly down his face, but he showed no sign of frustration or pride. Instead, he looked at the trainer with the same respect he had shown since stepping into the gym. He bowed slightly, his simple gesture carrying a message: he had not come to embarrass anyone, only to learn. But the trainer's pride was not so easy to quiet. His heart pounded with mixed emotions: shame for misjudging, pride wounded by the stranger's calmness, and confusion over how an actor could carry such real skill. He forced a laugh, though it came out strained, and muttered something in Thai to the students. The words roughly meant, "Fame does not make you a fighter." It was his last attempt to protect his authority. The students fell silent, unsure of how to react. Keanu, however, didn't challenge the remark. He only smiled gently, as if he understood the trainer's struggle. He stepped forward again, nodding to signal he was ready to continue. His humility disarmed the tension in the air. Instead of making the trainer feel small, Keanu's calmness almost invited him to continue, to exchange more than just strikes, to exchange lessons. The trainer decided he could not step back now. If he walked away, it would feel like defeat. So he came forward with renewed energy, his fists striking out sharply. This time, the speed increased. He threw a flurry of punches, aiming high and low, trying to break Keanu's defense. Yet Keanu remained unshaken. His arms lifted and turned at the right moments, deflecting each strike. His body moved with rhythm, shifting weight from one leg to another like a dancer who had memorized the steps long ago. The sound of gloves hitting pads echoed through the gym. The students held their breath as the clash grew more intense. The trainer tried everything he knew: sharp elbows, quick knees, surprise sweeps, but Keanu responded with almost effortless timing. He didn't use aggression, he used precision. His focus was absolute, his eyes never leaving his opponent. It was as if every move had been practiced for years, honed with dedication. For the trainer, frustration began to mix with awe. He was no longer just fighting a foreigner or an actor. He was standing against a man who carried the essence of martial arts in his spirit. Even though Keanu was famous for his films, what showed here was not Hollywood magic. It was discipline, patience, and respect, the true qualities of a martial artist. The students could feel it too. One of them whispered softly, "He's not fighting like he's in a movie. He's fighting like he's lived this." Another nodded, their eyes glued to Keanu's movements. To them, it was a lesson in humility and strength. The trainer launched another series of powerful strikes. He used his signature move, a sudden spinning elbow meant to surprise. But Keanu read it before it landed. He stepped back, just enough for the elbow to miss, and tapped the trainer's chest lightly with his glove. It wasn't an attack to hurt, only a reminder: "I saw that opening." The trainer stopped in his tracks, stunned. The room fell silent again. That light tap carried more weight than any hard strike. It was proof that Keanu's eyes could see through his opponent's moves, that his training wasn't just for film choreography but for real practice. The trainer's chest rose and fell quickly as he breathed, realizing he had been tested in ways he hadn't expected. Keanu quickly bowed again, breaking the tension. His gesture was so genuine that it softened even the hardest edges of the trainer's pride. For the first time, the trainer began to smile, though faintly. He lowered his fists and stepped back, signaling a pause. The students erupted into applause, clapping their hands, their admiration filling the gym. They weren't clapping for a movie star, they were clapping for the spirit of martial arts they had just witnessed. But the trainer was not ready to give up completely. After catching his breath, he raised a hand to silence the applause. Then, in broken English, he spoke to Keanu. "You fight good. But Muay Thai, different. Show me respect." His words were not angry, but they carried challenge. Keanu nodded, his expression calm. He understood perfectly. He stepped back into stance, signaling he was ready once more. The trainer's respect for him had grown, but his pride still needed reassurance. This next round would not be about teaching a lesson to a tourist. It would be about testing each other, two men sharing the ring of discipline, one as a lifelong master, the other as a humble student who carried his own strength. The trainer advanced again, but this time, there was less arrogance in his strikes. He fought with true spirit, putting his art into motion. And Keanu responded not with movie flair, but with authentic skill, meeting every strike with calm focus. The clash was no longer pride against humility. It was martial artist against martial artist, both learning from each other in the most honest way possible. For the students, it was unforgettable. They saw their master tested like never before, and they saw an actor, someone from far away, someone famous, step into their world with real respect. To them, it felt like watching a story that would be told again and again. By the end of the round, the trainer finally lowered his fists completely. His chest rose with heavy breaths, his forehead dripping with sweat. He looked at Keanu, not as a stranger anymore, not as a rival, but as a fellow fighter. The trainer extended his hand. Slowly, Keanu reached out and shook it, bowing deeply. The trainer returned the bow, his pride giving way to respect. The gym erupted once more in applause, louder than before. The students cheered, clapped, and even smiled with joy. What they had just witnessed was more than sparring. It was a lesson in humility, respect, and the universal language of martial arts. And so, in that small gym in Thailand, a Muay Thai trainer who once underestimated a visitor had found himself standing face to face with Keanu Reeves, the man who was not just John Wick on screen but also a student of discipline in real life. The battle of pride had ended, and what remained was respect, pure and powerful. The air in the gym had changed completely. What had begun as tension and pride was now filled with excitement and respect. The students were buzzing like bees, still clapping and whispering to each other about what they had just seen. Keanu Reeves, the man they knew from the screen as John Wick, had stood in their humble gym and sparred with their master without a single hint of arrogance. The trainer, who once looked at him with doubt, now looked at him with new eyes. His breathing was heavy, his body drenched in sweat, but his heart felt lighter. He had tested the man in front of him, and instead of humiliation, he found honor. Keanu stood calmly, his chest rising and falling slowly, his face still carrying that soft, respectful expression. He gave a small bow toward the trainer again, a gesture that said he respected not only the man but also the art of Muay Thai itself. The trainer, who usually demanded respect, found himself touched by this humility. For the first time in years, he felt like a student again, reminded of the values his own master had once taught him: discipline, respect, and humility above all. The silence was soon broken when one of the younger students stepped forward nervously. He held his gloves close to his chest and asked in broken English, "Sir, can you show me one move?" His eyes were wide with admiration, almost shining. The room went quiet as everyone waited to see how Keanu would respond. Instead of brushing it off, Keanu smiled warmly and nodded. He walked toward the boy, knelt down slightly so their eyes met at the same level, and said, "Only if you promise to keep training hard." The boy's face lit up with joy as Keanu gently guided him into a stance, correcting the position of his hands and feet with the same patience a real teacher would show. The trainer watched this silently. Inside, a wave of emotion passed through him. He realized how rare it was to see someone so famous, so accomplished, act with such kindness. Many men with half of Keanu's fame would have entered the gym full of pride, expecting special treatment. Yet here was a man who had faced him with calm strength, bowed with respect, and now was teaching a young student with gentle care. Word spread quickly outside the gym. By the time the session ended, a small crowd had gathered at the entrance. Some were curious neighbors, others were fans who had caught whispers of Keanu's presence. Phones began to rise, cameras clicking, but Keanu remained himself humble, quiet, offering smiles and nods without ever drawing attention to his fame. He shook hands with those who approached respectfully, but he never let the attention pull him away from the purpose of his visit. He was there not as a star, but as a student of Muay Thai. The trainer finally stepped forward and called for quiet. His voice was calm but strong, carrying authority. "Today," he said in Thai, later translated by one of the students, "we have seen something rare. A man from far away came here. I thought he was a tourist. I was wrong. He came with respect, with discipline, with the heart of a fighter. I misjudged him. For that, I ask his forgiveness." The students looked at Keanu, waiting for his response. Keanu bowed deeply, shaking his head. "No need," he said softly. "You gave me your time, your energy, and your lessons. That is a gift. I am the one who is thankful." His words carried weight, not because they were grand, but because they were sincere. The trainer felt a lump in his throat. He had spent years teaching discipline, but in this moment, it felt like the visitor had reminded him of his own forgotten lessons. After the formal sparring ended, Keanu stayed behind with the students. He joined them in simple drills, punching bags, practicing footwork, running short sprints. He laughed when they teased him gently about John Wick's famous scenes. At one point, a student asked, "In movie, you fight 10 men. Can you do here also?" The gym burst into laughter, including Keanu himself. His laughter was warm and unforced, echoing through the room. It made everyone forget for a moment that he was a global star. The trainer, standing at the side, watched all this with a new kind of pride, not the pride of superiority, but the pride of sharing his gym with someone who carried the true spirit of martial arts. He realized that Keanu's strength was not just in his fists or his kicks, but in his heart. The humility he showed was what made him great. That was the lesson the students needed most. Later, as the sun began to set, the trainer walked up to Keanu with a small gift. It was a pair of traditional Muay Thai shorts, red with golden embroidery. He held them out with both hands, a sign of respect. "For you," he said simply. "To remember." Keanu accepted them with both hands, bowing again. He held the shorts carefully, as though they were a treasure. "I will remember this day," he replied softly. "More than you know." The students clapped again, cheering for their guest. Some of them ran to fetch notebooks and asked for his autograph, but Keanu only signed after bowing and thanking each one individually. He did not rush. He did not act annoyed. Every signature, every handshake, every small moment he treated it with care. As the evening light faded, Keanu prepared to leave. The trainer walked him to the entrance, still feeling the weight of what had happened. Before Keanu stepped out, the trainer placed a hand on his shoulder. In Thai, he said words that one of the students translated aloud. Today, you reminded me that respect is the greatest strength. You may be John Wick in movies, but here, you showed the heart of a true martial artist. Keanu smiled, his eyes soft. Thank you, he said. It means a lot coming from you. With that, he stepped outside into the warm night, blending once again into the simple clothes of an ordinary traveler. The crowd outside cheered, but he waved only gently, not seeking the spotlight. His steps were quiet, his presence humble, as if he had never been the center of such a powerful moment. Inside the gym, the trainer turned to his students. His voice was thoughtful, his tone softer than usual. Never judge someone by how they look, he told them. Respect everyone. The stranger you laugh at today may be the one who teaches you tomorrow. Remember this. The students nodded deeply, their hearts filled with the memory of what they had seen. That night, the story spread across Bangkok. By the next day, people in coffee shops, street markets, and even other gyms were talking about it. Keanu Reeves trained at that gym, they whispered. The master tried to test him, but he stood like a rock. And he was so humble. The tale grew into something larger than life, blending reality with the legend of John Wick. But for Keanu, it was not about the fame or the whispers. It was about the connection he had made, the respect he had shared, and the reminder that true strength always lies in humility. The next morning, the little gym in Bangkok looked the same from the outside. Old posters on the wall, the faint smell of sweat drifting from inside, the sound of fists hitting pads. But inside the hearts of the people, something had changed forever. The students arrived early, still buzzing with excitement. They kept replaying the scenes from yesterday in their minds, whispering to each other about the way Keanu Reeves had stood calm, how he had fought with discipline, and how he had bowed with respect. For them, it wasn't just a story to tell, it was an experience that would stay with them for life. The trainer arrived later than usual, walking slowly, his thoughts heavy but clear. He had spent the night thinking. For years, he had believed that strength came from showing dominance, from making sure no student or visitor ever doubted who the master was. But yesterday, a stranger had walked in, and through humility, calmness, and discipline, had shown him that true strength was something deeper. He remembered Keanu's bow, the softness in his eyes, and the way he spoke with gratitude instead of arrogance. Those moments echoed louder than any strike or kick. The students greeted him with more energy than usual. They were eager to train, inspired by what they had seen. One of them asked shyly, "Master, will Keanu Reeves come again?" The trainer gave a small smile. "Maybe, maybe not," he said. "But what he gave us is more important than another visit. He showed us the spirit of respect. That is what we must keep alive." His voice carried calm authority, and the students nodded, understanding. Meanwhile, outside the gym, the story was already spreading across the city. Word of mouth traveled fast. Taxi drivers, shopkeepers, and street vendors repeated it as if they had witnessed it themselves. The trainer attacked him, but he moved like John Wick, one would say. He didn't show off, he bowed, another would add. By evening, small local papers had even picked up the story, writing about how Keanu Reeves had stepped into a Muay Thai gym and won the respect of everyone there. Some reporters exaggerated the details, saying he fought the trainer like in the movies, but those who were actually there knew the truth. It wasn't about fighting, it was about humility. For the students, training now felt different. Each time they threw a punch, they remembered Keanu's calm face. Each time they kicked, they thought about his patience. Even the younger ones, who once laughed during warm ups, now carried themselves more seriously. The trainer saw the change and felt proud. The lesson he had once tried to force through toughness had now been given in silence by a humble visitor. A few days later, Keanu returned quietly, this time without the crowd outside. He wore the same simple clothes, carrying no special attention. He walked into the gym and greeted everyone with a gentle smile. The students bowed deeply, their respect genuine. The trainer, who had once looked at him with doubt, now welcomed him like a brother. "You are always welcome here," he said in Thai, his voice soft. One of the students translated, and Keanu nodded gratefully. Instead of sparring with the trainer again, Keanu asked to join the students in their daily drills. He didn't want special treatment. He jumped rope with them, punched the heavy bags, practiced clinching, and even laughed when he stumbled during a new drill. The students admired how he never pretended to be perfect. He was willing to be corrected, willing to learn. That humility taught them more than any lecture ever could. At the end of the session, Keanu gathered everyone together. He spoke simply, his voice steady but warm. "I am thankful for this place," he said. "I travel many places, but here I found respect, honesty, and heart. Martial arts is not about showing power. It is about discipline and kindness. You have all shown me that." His words touched every student deeply. Some of them had never heard their master praised so openly. The trainer himself lowered his eyes, humbled once more. Before leaving, Keanu held up the Muay Thai shorts the trainer had gifted him. He said, "These are not just clothes. They are a reminder of what I learned here. I will keep them always." His voice carried sincerity, and the students clapped loudly, their hearts filled with pride. When he finally stepped out of the gym that day, there were fewer cameras, fewer people waiting. But for those who had trained with him, it didn't matter. They had witnessed something greater than fame. They had seen a man who could have demanded special treatment but instead chose humility. They had seen the difference between being strong and being truly powerful. The trainer often spoke of that day in the years that followed. He would gather new students and tell them the story. "A man once came here, and I thought he was nothing special. I attacked him, but he stood calm. He showed me respect even when I gave him none. That man was Keanu Reeves. And he taught me that humility is the highest form of strength." The students would listen in silence, inspired by a story that sounded almost like a legend. Keanu, on the other hand, moved on quietly as he always did. He never bragged about the moment, never told it in interviews to seek praise. For him, it was simply another lesson in his journey, a reminder that no matter how much fame or skill a person has, respect will always be the strongest weapon. But in that small gym in Bangkok, his presence left a mark that would never fade. The trainer became softer with his students, teaching them not only strikes and kicks but also the value of kindness. The students carried the memory like a badge of honor, telling their children and grandchildren one day about the time John Wick himself came to their gym and trained like one of them. And so, the story of that day lived on not as a tale of a fight, but as a lesson of humility. The Muay Thai trainer who once attacked Keanu Reeves discovered that strength is not about how hard you strike but how much respect you carry. The students who watched learned that heroes are not only on movie screens, they sometimes walk quietly into your life, bow their heads, and teach you the simplest truths. Keanu had come to Thailand searching for peace, and in the process, he left behind something greater. The gym, the trainer, and the students were never the same again. They carried his lesson forward, reminding themselves every day that real power is not in proving others wrong but in respecting them. And whenever someone laughed at a newcomer or underestimated a stranger, the trainer would raise his hand and say firmly, "Remember Keanu Reeves? Remember the man you thought was ordinary? Remember how he showed us what true strength looks like?" That reminder kept the spirit of humility alive in the gym for years to come, long after Keanu had gone.